The death of Ilsa Faust in Mission Impossible. Dead Reckoning was a shocking moment for the Mission Impossible franchise, and one that was ultimately a mistake. Tom Cruise has led the Mission Impossible franchise from the beginning as IMF agent Ethan Hunt, with Leatherstickle as the only other character who has appeared in every movie of the series. However, among the recurring characters, Ilsa quickly cemented herself as one of the most memorable as soon as she was introduced in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. In Mission Impossible Fallout, she cemented herself as part of the established ensemble and seemed poised to lead the franchise forward alongside Cruise. However, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning delivered the devastating blow as Ilsa died in a fight with the villainous Gabriel. It was perhaps the most heartbreaking death in the Mission Impossible franchise. However, instead of giving the rest of the series an emotional charge, it was a controversial move that robbed the Mission Impossible movies of something special. While the death of Ilsa Faust might have seemed like the only option for the franchise to take at that point, Mission Impossible ended up sacrificing one of its best characters for the sake of a shocking death. Ethan Hunt has always been the centerpiece of the Mission Impossible franchise for good reason. As a result, it has been hard for any other characters to really shine. However, Ilsa made a name for herself as a complex and fascinating character in her own right, who also made Ethan a more interesting character just by interacting with him. Ilsa was a seasoned spy, just like Ethan, but one who was made into a tragic figure. She is used and made expendable by her government, making her disillusioned with her role in the espionage world. However, she is continuously pulled back in, sometimes simply to help Ethan, but wants nothing more than to escape. She defied expectations of being a love interest to Ethan or another team member to play second fiddle to him. Instead, she felt like she was in her own story, elevating the movie whenever she appeared. Having Ethan Hunt at the center of the final Mission Impossible movie was obviously essential. However, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning sorely missed Ilsa's absence. With so much of the franchise depending on Cruise's performance, they could not afford to lose the only other character who had complexity beyond the mission at hand. Losing Ilsa Faust as a character was damaging to the Mission Impossible franchise, but her death was also poorly received by fans for its connection to a controversial trend. Very quickly following the release of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, the death of Ilsa was labeled a case of fridging by many fans. The term fridging refers to when a female character is killed off in a story for the sole purpose of giving emotional motivation to the male protagonist. Other recent examples of this include Deadpool 2, The Dark Knight, and Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows. The trend has been criticized as being lazy writing at best and betraying many popular female characters. Ilsa's death in the movie is only really there as a way of raising the emotional stakes for Ethan, having to watch someone he cares about die. However, the fridging in Ilsa's case is even more difficult to take as the movie already established that Gabriel killed a woman Ethan cares about before he ever joined the IMF, so the emotional stakes were already there. While Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning certainly builds to Ilsa's death, making it feel inevitable in a way, it is also hard to believe when it actually happens because there was so much of the character left to explore. The tragedy of Ilsa's character was something that should have been resolved in the franchise. She had fought for so long in a world that did not appreciate her sacrifice that she earned her happy ending rather than an unceremonious death. In Mission Impossible Fallout, it was strongly hinted that she would be joining Ethan's team, and their bond could grow even stronger. This dynamic could have been a fascinating thing to explore in the rest of the franchise, as Ethan could have been torn between being with someone who wants and deserves to leave this life behind, and his feeling of needing to be there as the man who can always get the job done. The ending of the Mission Impossible franchise feels like it should have been Ethan and Ilsa heading off into the sunset together. Mission: Impossible. The final reckoning delivered on the thrills in what might be the franchise's final entry, with some of the biggest stunts in any Mission: Impossible movie.